to The Kitchen Table, a show dedicated to helping you escape diet culture, gain trust with food, honor your body, and live a brighter life. Hello and welcome back to The Kitchen Table. I am so glad you're here. I'm your host, Alicia Brown, an anti-diet registered dietitian nutritionist. And today I am so excited because I am here with Brooke and Alyssa from Diet Rioters. You can find them on Instagram, diet.rioters, Brooke and Alyssa. I'm almost like fangirling over here right now. I've been absorbing their content. They are amazing. And they share the last name of Miller. And I can't just wait to introduce you to them. Brooke and Alyssa are both intuitive eating moms and dietitians living in Denver, Colorado. They co-host the Diet Riot podcast, where they work on dismantling diet culture. And Alyssa is passionate about helping parents raise intuitive and independent eaters. And you can find her at mama.and.me_RD. And Brooke enjoys helping moms heal their relationship with food and their body at nutrition.for.mamas. They also love hanging out on Instagram at Diet Rioters again. And so, Brooke and Alyssa, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're so excited to be here.
We were just chatting before, just to clue you all in, we were chatting before about COVID stuff and parenting stuff. And like the world is just so crazy right now. And speaking of what's going on in the world, right now at the recording of this podcast, it is Weight Stigma Awareness Week. And so I wanted to just ask the Diet Rioters, Brooke and Alyssa here, about how weight stigma impacts their work or their work with their clients that they work with rather, in their work with mamas and their work with children. And so weight stigma is so pervasive. We see it everywhere, from schools, bullying. We see it in a clinical setting. We see it even within our own families. We see weight stigma exist even among our families with those that we love the most. And many of us are very unaware of it. And today on this podcast, and as a part of Weight Stigma Awareness Week, I just want to bring some knowledge about like what weight stigma is, how pervasive it is, and how it's impacting our lives as women and as mothers, and as how we raise intuitive eaters to really acknowledge weight stigma and what it is, and to understand ourselves more in the process. So Brooke and Alyssa, take it away. Thank you so much for being here again.
Of course. I would love to start just by saying, weight stigma is something I think at the surface level, a lot of people can get on board with and be like, oh yeah, that probably happens. And then they kind of brush through it and brush past it. But truly, when you start to break down what weight stigma does, just like you said, in every aspect of our life, it can be truly detrimental to people's health and their well-being, along with just the way that they're treated as humans, right? So I think it is important to say, okay, what is weight stigma and how can I identify it and start to make changes? And I think from my perspective with Mama and Me RD and really working inside of families, I see weight stigma come across in ways of parents asking if they can even feed their kids because of how big they are or where they sit on the weight percentage. Whereas a kid in the normal weight percentage, on the growth curves, they might not even think that. Like, of course, they're going to feed their kid because they're hungry. And so when you start to kind of break it down like that, we're basically having a bias or an idea of what people do or do not deserve based on their weight, which is something visual that we think we can guess where they are in kind of the categories that people have given us, the BMI, which we all know is a bunch of crap. But, this is what has been, like we've said, compounded in our information that we've gathered from, data, quote unquote, I will say, and scientists telling us these things that truly the actual research is proving to be untrue. And so what I've seen inside of families is really the detrimental of feeling guilty for having an overweight child, quote unquote overweight, of course, or deciding whether or not they deserve to eat a snack or should they restrict their intake because of their weight, rather than realizing that everybody is different, everybody is beautiful, and everybody deserves to eat, and raising them in a way that you understand, especially during childhood, that their weight is going to ebb and flow, and they're going to grow in different directions at different times and go through spikes and plateaus. And really in our culture, it's treated as a bad thing to ebb and flow and to gain weight and to get rounder and then taller and then plateau for a while or whatever that might look like. When in reality, that's how the human body works. And everyone is so unique and different. And we're really, not celebrating that. What we're taught is to assume that every child grows perfectly on this beautiful curve and, really focusing on what their health looks like according to what they look like physically, which is, as we all know, 100% untrue and can actually be quite damaging in the way that doctors diagnose children or what they suggest for parents to do. I mean, to recommend to restrict calories, which I've seen doctors do, in the prepubescent or pubescent period of time is so detrimental to their long-term health, growth, development, hormones. I mean, all of these things to say, okay, now we need to restrict calories for this 12-year-old is quite unhealthy. And that is all coming from a place of weight stigma rather than trusting each individual body to do what it needs to do in this growth process.
Oh, there's so much truth there. And especially the notion of dieting or putting a child on a diet, rather than recognizing that they just grow so uniquely in their own way, especially during those like pivotal stages, like, pre-puberty, or even younger in some cases. I know that they're taking BMI, as you mentioned, a body mass index. That's a height over weight equation. They're even taking that in schools at an earlier age, right? So this is just like fostering this weight stigma. And it's really having parents wanting to control their kids' weight to control their health. Would you agree that that's like at the root of this?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, what kind of misinformation is out there in regards to like how parents should address their children and their weight then in this case?
Okay. So I was actually a WIC dietitian for a few years. And so I worked with a lot of moms with kids under the age of 5. And I did have several moms coming in daily, and I would have to actually do their BMI and tell them where they were on the growth chart and discuss like different things with them. Like, what are they eating every day? How much juice are they drinking? How many cups of milk are they drinking? Are they eating a variety of foods? And so I would definitely focus on like what kinds of things can we add to their diet rather than taking away. But I do feel like there's a lot of pressure on moms from their pediatricians and from society and like grandmas saying like, oh, they're getting a little chunky. Like, are you sure? Like, you're overfeeding them, you're feeding them too much. Like, they're getting a lot of mixed messaging at the pediatrician's office or with family and friends telling them like, you're overfeeding your kid. And, sometimes there are some tweaks we can do. I mean, I've had kids come in to my office who are drinking 40 ounces of juice a day, and then they're not eating foods because they're not hungry. And so, those would be things that we would address, like, hey, your kiddo's drinking a lot of juice and it's actually affecting like their poop and they're not hungry for a variety of foods. So let's work on cutting down the juice so that we can, encourage a variety of foods. So I think that there's positive ways to address it, but I do think that there is a lot of shame involved when our kids are not growing the way that they want to. But I also see that the other way too. Like, I had a preemie baby who was very underweight. He had growth restriction. I had a lot of pressure on me to get him to gain weight before open heart surgery, and was pressured, like, if he doesn't gain X amount of weight, he's getting a feeding tube. If you can't get him to gain weight, like, these things are going to happen. We're pushing out his open heart surgery. And so I think it can be really stressful for parents on both ends of the spectrum if we're hearing that our child is underweight and we need to fatten them up, like, quote unquote, or they're overweight and that we need to get them to lose weight. And one thing I always talk to my parents at WIC about was, hey, like, we never want to put kids on a diet. We never want them to lose weight. And I was, saying that back when I wasn't even truly an intuitive eating dietitian, but just saying like, hey, we really shouldn't put kids on diets. And I knew at that time, like, that wasn't good to like instill weight loss in a child, especially like a young child. And I would tell them like, they're going to grow and plateau and their height and weight, like, it's not linear. I think so many times we're told like we have to follow their growth chart. And if it's not linear all the time, we need to panic. But I think there's a lot of great pediatricians out there too, who are really reassuring to parents, and they don't panic necessarily if there is like a plateau with their weight where it's too slow, or if they're gaining really quickly. There are a lot of good pediatricians out there who they're going to really dig deep at like what else is going on, because as we all know, weight loss or weight gain can be a side effect. So it can be a useful tool to diagnose something. So if we see a patient and all of a sudden they're gaining weight really rapidly or losing weight really rapidly and nothing else has changed in their life, it is really important to kind of dig deep. Like, are there hormonal changes? Can we do a CBC and check their blood? I mean, is it stress related? Is it sleep related? Like, it is important to take note of those changes and kind of like dig a little bit deeper rather than just telling patients like, oh, you've gained 20 pounds in X amount of time, you need to just go lose the weight. It's actually better as a healthcare professional to say, oh, wow, you've had some like rapid changes. Like, I wonder what that's about, because a lot of times, and we'll dig deep into this too with weight stigma, but a lot of times patients come in, especially like to a GI doc or something along those lines, saying like, I've had rapid weight gain or weight loss. They're praised if it's weight loss, and then they miss a diagnosis. Like maybe they're losing weight because they have malabsorption or they have cancer. Like almost every day, like I work with cancer patients every day, and so many of them say, I was getting praised and praised and praised for weight loss. Turns out I just had stage 3 cancer and they've been missing it. And then there's patients that are gaining weight. I actually have family friends and stuff who gained weight due to cancer, and it was all fluid. So like fluid related to their cancer, 2 women I know. And again, like they missed it because it was just like, they were just told to lose weight. And then it turns out like they have stage 3 or stage 4 cancer. And so I think we just need to do a better job of like really listening to patients. And I think a lot of times patients do come in and say, listen, my diet has been the same forever. Like I don't restrict, I don't diet. I've just been eating kind of what I want when I want. And doctors don't believe them too.
Yeah.
Like, something I hear often too is like, no, really, I'm still working out. I'm still like just living my usual life. Like nothing's changed. And doctors kind of push back like, oh, I actually like, no, you still need to lose weight. They just don't believe that it's necessarily a side effect.
Well, and I think too, we have such a fear, right? People don't want to go to the doctor because they don't want to get a scale. They don't want their doctor to tell them that they're obese and they whatever. I mean, people have such a fear of getting on the scale. I actually watched this woman's stories on Instagram the other day, and she was going in for literally something I cannot even tell you how disassociated it is with weight or anything. She was so nervous to go to the doctor because she was like, I just know he's going to tell me to lose weight. I'm 4 months postpartum. I feel like crap, all this stuff. And then she goes to the doctor because she had to get something checked. She comes home and she gets on her stories and she says, oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't even mention my weight. That's amazing. I love this doctor. I'm going to go back to him, all this stuff. And it was like such a fear in her head that she almost didn't go to the doctor to get this very important thing checked out because she was so afraid of getting this in front of people and feel shame, but then also to get a talking to or whatever, like even what I was for literally has nothing to do with weight. And of course, we can always talk about how weight also has a lot to do with certain diseases that are connected right now in the medical industry that we need to dismantle and take part, that those are not actually related. But there's such a stigma there, just in general, of maybe you do have something going on and you're afraid to go to the doctor to get checked out because you're afraid of stepping on that scale, because you're afraid of having that conversation. And that's because within the medical community, it's so looked down upon, and it's always their first step of, oh, well, maybe you need to lose weight or change your diet. And especially in the mom community too, I just want to point out how ingrained it is for us. Like if we all think about medical checkups, almost for our children, almost the only thing we think about is the growth curve, right? Like that's all they do at these appointments. So a lot of times it's so heavily focused on the growth curves and what their weight is doing, rather than focusing on things like how much sleep are they getting? Are they hitting their milestones? Like a lot of the other things, the social interactions, are they having a variety of their diet? Are they getting enough sleep? Are they sleeping too much? What does this look like? We're so focused on the growth curves, and it even makes its way into our social interactions with other moms, right? We share on our birth announcements what their weight is. We tell everyone what their birth weight is. I mean, it's very silly, but these are the things that we then all of a sudden have. Like I've had 2 babies that are right around 9 pounds, 9 pounds, 2 ounces, I think was one of them. And every time I tell someone that, they go, oh my gosh, that's a huge baby. And they like all of a sudden make these judgments of my children. I mean, I'm not a small human. I'm like, yeah, of course they're large babies. I mean, it's, but we have this idea because we put their weights on birth announcements that now all of a sudden we've all become experts of what a normal baby should look like, when of course every baby is uniquely different. Into everything, right? Even in our conversation, when we see a child we haven't seen in a while, we say, oh, you've gotten so big. That would never be appropriate to say to a full grown adult, although that is also said sometimes. But it's just so focused around the weight and size of your child that a lot of parents will feel shame when they're going to a play date for the first time. Is someone going to make a comment about my child's size? Or they'll say something like, oh, they're so scrawny, you should feed them a sandwich. We start to make these judgments of how parents are actually feeding their kids when they have absolutely no clue what's going on at home.
Oh, there's so much to unpack here. Thank you so much, you both, for your sharing. This is like so amazing. And I'm just like bringing it back to my own experience. Like, of course, we're so focused on weight because we're so focused on weight since the moment that we were born.
Yes.
Right? Like, of course, as we like we're grown into adults, still focused on weight. But since birth, we were focused on weight. And as parents, we were focused on weight, or our parents, I should say, rather, were focused on our weight for our growth and our health. And that just transcends on who do we are as adults. And then we pass that on to the next generation. And so, of course, there's this emphasis. And I think it's all like with good intentions, just because diet culture is so perverse in this weight conversation. Absolutely. It's with good intentions to say, like, I want my child to be healthy. I want my child to be accepted and normal, but more so healthy, right? And so I think it's with these good intentions, but underneath that, there's so much to unpack. And I think the biggest thing is to really dissociate weight and health, and unpack when the weight is correlated with health, unpack and dive deeper beyond the weight into like things that might be misdiagnosed or undiagnosed, as you were saying, Brooke. I think that that's so critical in your work with cancer patients. I think that just rings true that, like, yes, there can be other things going on. People getting recommendations for weight loss when they're retaining fluids, this makes no sense. And that weight stigma that's in there is the thought or the weight stigma within that is that the actual problem is not being addressed, and the blanket statement because of weight is being made. And that is ethically wrong. I have like an ethically, this is not good. This is not good ethics. This is not good practice. And this is really judgmental behavior. So like, what can we better do as both dietitians in our practices and also as parents and also as women, right? Like, how can we change the vocabulary? How can we help reduce weight stigma and help people feel accepted in their bodies as they are?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes within our house, I think we as parents really need to make that a priority where we're raising our kids in a world, because the world itself is crazy. We all know that. I mean, look at what we're living in now. But just really teaching and instilling those values in our children at a very young age. And it comes with how we talk about things and people in our own house. And it's also our actions and our words. And so we're raising our kids inside our house saying, not using those words in a negative way, because like I was raised in a society, in a world, in a house where fat was bad, fat was unhealthy. And I grew up thinking that. I actually became a dietitian because I wanted to fix the obesity epidemic. I mean, this is what I was taught. I was an athlete. I just grew up being told, like, in order to be healthy, you have to be fit. You have to be athletic. You have to do X, Y, and Z. And then when I became a mom, I just saw, like, oh my gosh, we as moms are so hard on our bodies. I mean, we birth out a baby and we put all this pressure on ourselves to lose the baby weight. And like all three of us, we've had kids, like we know our bodies change, like pregnancy changes our bodies. And that's great. Like, that's fine. Our bodies have changed forever and it's fine. But we as moms to other moms, we need to really, like when we're speaking to our mom friends, it's, hey, how are you doing? Not, hey, you look so good, you lost the baby weight. Like, so there's all of these comments and change in conversation we can have with other moms and friends, but it's also the conversations with our kids as they grow older. So teaching them that all people are worthy. Like, it doesn't matter what their size is, what their race is, what their religion is. Like, we need to respect all people. And sure, we all have disagreements. We're not going to agree on every single issue. That is fine. That is fine. But we all need to respect and treat all bodies with respect. And especially, like, I'm now raising a baby with special needs, and my world has been flipped in a way that, you know, like he is not treated as an equal. Like, we've had a lot of mean, hateful comments, like, on the internet, you know, telling us that he's better off dead because he has special needs. And, like, people are told that every day for being in a large body. Like, I've seen the trolls on the internet where a woman is in a plus size body wearing a swimsuit and people are telling her to go die. People are telling her that she shouldn't be wearing that she shouldn't be allowed to. And I think a lot of people don't think that those comments are true and that they actually happen. And they kind of ignore it. They kind of feel like, oh, you're overreacting. Those things don't actually happen. And they put their blinders on and they just ignore the fact that people in larger bodies, they are stigmatized. They are not treated as equals. They're not treated always with respect. And that is just something we need to instill in our children, but we also need to do a better job as women with our friends, with our sisters, with our moms, because even when I had my son, like, people would come up to me, oh my God, you lost the baby weight. You look so good. I was struggling mentally. Like, I was going through anxiety and, like, and it's just like, I wasn't being asked, like, how are you doing mentally? You have a lot on your plate. It was like, hey, you look so good. What's your secret? And
life must be going great.
Life must be going great because you lost the baby weight. And it's like, I'm not trying to lose the baby. I'm just trying to, like, keep my family alive, you know?
Wow.
And so there's a lot of work that we have to do, but I do think we as moms have a big responsibility.
Absolutely. And I would add on to that also that, like, the ways that we talk to ourselves in front of our kids is so important as well, right? Like, especially in front of our kids, but the ways that we talk to ourselves just in general, you know, like the comments that we say about ourselves, either out loud or in our minds. Maybe it starts even there. If we back up even further of, like, eliminating weight stigma, maybe it's just like the stigmatizing thoughts that we've rehearsed for so long from what we've absorbed from our culture, from what we've absorbed from our own parents, all of the hurtful things that people have said about our bodies. It takes a great amount of just bravery and knowledge and realization that we've been victim to this weight stigma, a lot of us. And after we've had that realization, we can start, like, you know, questioning those stigmatizing thoughts and questioning the stigma altogether. And maybe in our minds, if we can kind of reverse that and back up, then we can have more empowering thoughts happen or make our way more towards, you know, some type of acceptance with the weight stigma and with our thoughts. So then that can then translate into the words that we say and how we treat others, and as a byproduct of how we treat ourselves. Alyssa, do you have anything to add on to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's so beautiful. I think that's such a great point that it really does. First of all, it takes time. I think some of us, like, I think just chatting here, obviously all of us have gone through intuitive eating and have slowly undone a lot of what diet culture has done in our life damage wise slowly. So to anyone who's listening right now who feels so overwhelmed, it takes so much time. And every time you peel back another layer, you feel great about it. And then you go, okay, there's more to be done here. And you continue to kind of flip that script inside your head. So I just want to encourage anyone who's listening that it takes time. We've all been there and we're absolutely not perfect. And there are still things, and Brooke and I talk about this on our podcast all the time. We are still learning. There's still going to be things that we look back at our podcast and are kind of cringe, like, oh, we didn't realize that was totally rooted in diet culture. So I just want to encourage people listening that it absolutely takes time. But yeah, I think focusing on this idea that our parenting ability is not reflected in what our child's weight looks like. I think so many of us get tied up into if we're a good or a bad mom based on our child's size. And I think that about ourselves too. We think that it's like what Brooke is saying, when we lose the baby weight or don't lose the baby weight, we tie our worth in that. And our worth is in no way tied to our weight or our child's weight or anything along those lines. It is completely independent and separate. And unfortunately, our culture has just put such a heavy hand on weight and trying to tie them up together. And really, when we realize that that comes from diet culture trying to manipulate us into buying their product, into spending more money, into trying to achieve this ideal that is unachievable to anybody and anybody, I think we start to unravel. And I loved what you said, Alicia, of questioning. You're able to start to question. And I think so many people, and I myself included, are so tied up in this idea of weight equals worth that you don't feel like you have an option. You feel like your only choice is to lose the weight. My only choice is to keep dieting. My only choice is to try this new fad diet, whatever, because I have to, because it's tied to my worth, because it's tied to my health, because I'm going to die if I don't, because I'm not going to live long enough to see my children get married or whatever. And this is diet culture manipulating us in a way so that they can make money off of us forever. So yes, I think it absolutely starts at home. I have really enjoyed and loved being a part of the community on Instagram, giving away, all this free educational resources and information, how to talk to your doctor when they say something fat phobic, how to say no to getting onto the scale. Some of these things that have been really powerful, I've seen come in waves online. I mean, we talked about how dark place the internet can be, but it's also a source of light and source of information and a great resource to learn, how do I handle these things? Thank God we have choices on who our doctor is. And most of us can choose to say, you know what? You're not my cup of tea. I don't like the way that you're treating me. I don't like that it's all about weight with you. I'm going to choose someone else. And by the way, I'm going to let everyone know of how fat phobic you are on the internet. So I think, it's a really empowering thing to know that there is free information, especially, of course, we're all on Instagram.
Yes.
On Instagram, of how to handle those situations, and how to really teach ourselves to start questioning, like you said, what our own weight stigma is in our own life and how we can identify it, change it, and then hopefully raise a new generation that is immune to diet culture.
Oh my gosh. I just got like whole full body, just like tingles listening to all of that. I'm going to replay this podcast for myself like 20 times already. I just know it. I just really am.
It's so powerful.
It's so powerful. And I hope that through this conversation of weight stigma, as you were saying, like for people who are new to that term, who are new to this concept, I hope that you can really feel like you're not alone in those experiences that you've had. And I think that that's a great point that you share, that like, there's information about this. You're not alone. And we are, all three of us are here like doing the work. We're discovering that there's so much more work to be done, right? Like that's so true. But also like, we're here to shed some like light. We're helping people live bigger, bolder, and brighter lives by just acknowledging they're not alone, and by helping them see through knowing that they're not alone, that there's a way to reverse this. There's a way to like change the tide. This is truly a movement away from fat phobia, away from weight stigma, into embracing bodies of all sizes and looking at health deeper than just what's on the surface. I was just before our call today, this is so coincidental, but I was looking for little, books for Amelia, my 4.5-month-old, to like read to her that have some like body diversity. And there's not a lot of books.
Right.
I am really struggling. Disney's Cinderella's, I'm sorry, but like we need some more body sizes in here. So, I mean, if you have any recommendations, let me know. I'm still going to like look for more. I might end up writing a children's book because we got to get this done.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
I think that would be an incredible post to put out there is some books.
So true. And so like, speaking of, shedding some light on the internet, I've got to direct people to you. Can you share a little bit about the programs, the offerings that you have, where they can find you, how they can connect with you and potentially work with you?
Yes. Well, Alyssa and I run the Diet Riders membership. It is so much fun. It is so much fun. So inside our membership, each week we go through weekly work together. And so our members can do it on their own, or they can do it in the group and post their comments And then everybody in the group comments back and forth to each other, creates a community. We have like a weekly win page where, you know, we can just talk about certain things. Like I had dessert yesterday and I didn't feel guilty, or I've gone X amount of weeks without weighing myself and I'm starting to feel like less of that restrict and binge cycle or whatever their wins are. Alyssa and I do mini trainings in there. And so we did one on hunger fullness. Next is feeling guilty after eating, like how not to feel guilty after eating. And then we have live Q&As where we essentially do a Zoom call with all of our members, and it's pre-recorded, or it's recorded in case people have to miss it. So they can get their questions answered. And so that has been so much fun. Like we just decided this podcast, we'd been podcasting for almost 100 episodes, and we just realized like we need to do something more. And people kept asking like, how can we work with you? Like, what can we do? And we just figured a membership model was great because people could work with us for a long period of time without a really expensive cost. Because we have some people in here who are like, I can't afford one-to-one. I can't afford it, but I need some sort of support. And so it is really great, and is also great for anybody who's worked with a dietitian one-to-one or is currently working with a dietitian one-to-one, so that they can kind of segue into that and still have a community that they're working with and surrounding with. So they're still getting that community support, but it's not as intensive as like one-to-one. And then I also take on one-to-one clients. So I do have a few spots available for working with women one-to-one on intuitive eating. And then Alyssa.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So just to piggyback on that, inside the Diet Writers membership, so our doors do open a few times a year. So I'm not sure when this episode is going to air, but early 2021, they'll be opening again. And the membership, we really just saw an opening for creating a community of people with like-minded or similar goals in mind. And really truly capitalizing on this idea that intuitive eating shouldn't be done alone. And it's actually quite hard to do in isolation and alone. And when you have a community of people who understand what you're talking about, what you're going through, it can be really powerful. And we've seen that inside the membership. And that we actually started the membership because we saw it in ourselves. When Brooke and I started podcasting and talking about intuitive eating more and more together, that's where we rocket shipped up in intuitive eating in our journey and felt really confident in it just by sharing our wins. And so many of us are isolated in this idea, surrounded. We were talking about before we went on air, our families who don't quite get it necessarily. Like we are a lot of times alone in this intuitive eating journey, and you can question it really quickly when everyone around you is jumping on a new bandwagon. So it's just a really nice, safe place for you to learn about intuitive eating and be pushed and really develop some awesome community and relationships focused around the same thing and the same values and everything, which is really cool. So about that. And then also, like we talked about at the beginning, I work under Mama and Me RD on Instagram with moms on how to raise independent and intuitive eaters. So kind of what we were talking about, how we can kind of change the world in weight stigma, is it starts at home. It's raising our children to be immune to diet culture, like we talked about, and to really respect everybody and their own bodies as well, and hopefully avoid the negative comments that we've all struggled through. And so I really focus on teaching moms how to do that within their children, how to preserve their intuitive eating abilities since birth. And I do that through my Instagram for sure, but also I have a program called Table Talk. It's all about picky eating and how to develop an independent eater. And that program opens a few times a year as well. So
Oh, I am just on fire for your both. I'm on fire for your work. I'm on fire for this movement of dismantling diet culture, as you do both through your membership program and each individually as you work with mamas and children. I'm so obsessed with you both. I just feel like I just made two great friends today. So thank you so much. And if you'd like to connect, with Brooke and Alyssa, I will put their Instagram handles again in the show notes. And if you would like to reach out to them, I'm sure that they would like to connect with you. And lastly, girls, just thank you so much for hopping on with me today on the show. And if anybody else has any questions about this episode, you can also DM me at aliciabrown.rdn on Instagram, and I'm happy to connect you as well. Their membership program sounds amazing. And yes, you're not alone in facing weight stigma. You're also not alone in wanting to rebel against diet culture. If you're just feeling done with it and you want to be in a membership community with other awesome people, you got to join. So let me know if you have any questions. And thank you, Brooke and Alyssa, again for hopping on with me today. This was such an impactful episode.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
That was so fun.
Yay.